Hey, y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So, for the second time on this channel, I'm really, really happy to have Dr. Veronika Wright with me. She has a PhD in technical physics from Graz University of Technology, Austria, and is the founder of a battery focused social enterprise, Electrified Veronika. And also, very, very recently, is the author of a brand new book, The Drive to Electric: How Innovative Minds Are Shaping Our Future, which I have started to read, and it's super, super cool. So we're going to talk about that one some today. But I actually wanted to start by asking you, first of all, thank you so much for being here. I can't believe it's been over 3 months since we talked last. It's just like, I thought it was like last week, and it's already been 3 months. But I wanted to ask you, what is technical physics? I'm very curious, reading your biography. I was like, what is that?
Well, thank you so much for having me again. I really enjoyed the last time, and I'm looking forward to today chatting with you again. Well, what is technical physics? That's a great question. It's a bit of everything. Like all these physicists out there are kind of completely crazy people who have totally versatile careers like me. In this studies, you get a completely versatile education, mathematics, physics, engineering. You get this very, very broad spectrum of so many different things. And this is why afterwards you can just do everything. I don't consider myself an expert in everything, but I have the ability to understand everything. And this is how I went out after I finished my studies.
Very cool. Okay. So was your undergraduate degree in the same area, or was that totally different?
It was also technical physics. And
Okay.
then in my PhD, I specified solid state physics and quantum chemistry and things like
Right.
this, so more
Okay.
on the molecular atomic level.
So, yeah, someplace back there, I have a couple of solid state physics books. Those were tough subjects. So cool. And I think I asked you this last time, but especially considering you just published a book. Why batteries? Why are you so passionate about it that you're starting a whole social, media enterprise and publishing a book and kind of shouting out to everyone how important batteries are? Why? Was there some weird childhood trauma that caused this, or?
Absolutely not. Well, actually, not at all. I was never, ever before when I grew up in touch with automotive or batteries, not at all. But I developed this passion just through my first job. So after I finished my studies, I joined AVL in Austria, which is an international engineering company. And I started there in a battery team. So my first job was in the battery area, electric vehicles. And this is where I started this passion. When I was so fascinated that we don't know everything about batteries. I'm fascinated that batteries are this electrochemical system that changes over time. That makes it very, very interesting to me. And then, of course, all the applications, all the opportunities that we have through batteries going electric, transitioning from engines to battery electric vehicles, transitioning to renewable energies. For me, the battery is the core of all of that. So
Right. In a weird way, batteries almost seem kind of alive because they really do change over time, right? A new battery, well, certainly before you condition and everything, it's very different chemically from an old battery that's been around for several years and used a lot. So yeah, that's very, very, okay, fascinating. So I hope you don't mind. I'm not doing it here, but in post-production, I want to put up like a graphic. You
yeah.
kind of base your book around that battery biography, like cyclical image. And it was very cool because each of the people you interview, you sort of place them on that. And I think that's really cool. So anyway, I'll put it up here briefly, but everyone should read the book because I'm maybe 25% of the way through and it's fascinating so far. But so can you explain to everybody what a battery biography is, to kind of go along with that image, I guess?
Yes, yes. So I created the battery biography as a way to illustrate the life of a battery in electric vehicles area and in energy storage. So it's a concept that I came up with for people to better understand the economics, the business models, and really the technology of batteries and how it all works together because it's kind of complex. And as we just talked, like the battery for me is this electrochemical system, and it's very similar to a human being, actually. It changes over time, as you just mentioned. And I have always been fascinated by people's lives and their biographies. So I thought, why not describe the life of a battery with a biography? And describing the whole journey. So where do we get raw materials from to make a battery? How do we use it in its first life? What happens to the battery when it's not good enough anymore? Can we use it in a second life? And then finally, can we recycle it? And then can we retrieve these valuable raw materials, and this whole process would start again?
Right.
So I like to say the battery biography, from birth to when the battery is made, to rebirth, to when it's used in a second life, to reincarnation, to when through recycling we make a new battery. And the process starts over and over again.
Very cool. I think one of the interesting aspects of your book, a lot of technical books are just like, here's the details about a battery or something, but you interviewed, I can't remember, a dozen-ish people for the book, and you talk about their biographies too. And I think that adds such a really nice touch to the book. So rather than just dry facts about it, it's tied into why these people are so passionate about, I mean, everything from atomic physics, basically, all the way to recycling batteries. And I think you start the book with that quote about how nature doesn't really waste. Nature makes good use of waste products. I think it's something like that. I'm doing a terrible job of quoting it, but anyway, so human beings should too. And I think that's really, really a cool way to think about batteries. So rather than, you use it and then I've got, it's like you've got your AA battery, and I know you shouldn't do this, but a lot of people, it dies and they just throw it in the garbage can. And that's really bad for the environment, by the way. but it's that thinking about it as kind of a linear process. You've got an object, it finishes, and then you discard it. But to think about it instead as a cyclical thing is really, really cool. So,
for me, it was really important not to write a technical book, because especially for batteries, the technology changes so fast. Once you start writing about lithium-ion batteries, the next chemistry is there. So a technical book for me doesn't work. And I'm a people's person. I love conversations. I love a one-to-one conversation, understanding how did you grow up? Where do you come from? Why are you doing what you're doing? And I found my dream job. I really have this passion for what I'm doing. And all these people have the same or similar vision. And it's just so amazing. And I'm really, really thankful that they shared this with me without knowing how it will end up in the end. So it was a great experience.
And they're from all over the globe too, which is also really fascinating. So it's not just Canada, the United States, or Tokyo, or something. It's all over the place. It's very, very interesting how that all works together.
The situation is just so different. If we go electric, we have to consider where we are on the planet, because it makes a difference. So it was very important to me to have people from all over the place.
Right. Cool. I think it's more or less towards the end of the book, but you touch on the battery passport, and I think it's related to the battery biography. But I don't know. I didn't give you this question before, so I'm throwing out these weird little things. But I was curious, the passport's really interesting. Is the idea that you have a history down to the chemicals, or what is that?
Yes, so it is, if you will, a collaboration between stakeholders, so between companies along the battery value chain, to describe the life of a battery. So it's kind of the techniques behind it to really track, to generate data, trusted, independent data that we as a society can trust for batteries. This can be the CO2 footprint. Right now, there is no way for us, if a big company says, oh my gosh, yes, we're all of a sudden sustainable and CO2 neutral, or whatever word they use, there is no way for us, for me as a person, to prove that or to trust that. And so this battery passport was really, it's still a concept, and they're on their way, as many other companies, to be able to have this trusted data source, and also considering, human rights, if we think about mining and all these other aspects, not only technological, but also really economical and also social aspects.
Okay. I think that's I think that's like very, very critical for a lot of things, not just batteries, but certainly because there's an awful lot of rare earth chemicals, and there's just a lot of stuff that comes together to make a battery. And that comes from a disparate area, disparate areas geographically, disparate groups of people who are mining it or creating it. So yeah, it seems to make a lot of sense to have some sort of accountability. I guess that's the idea.
Yes.
Cool. So in the book, what was the biggest eye-opening or kind of aha moment when talking to somebody else about batteries that you came across, or maybe two?
I could have 15 or 20.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
every conversation that I had was eye-opening to me. I was fascinated by these entrepreneurial spirits, hear about their why, their doubts, their challenges. I asked everybody, do you ever doubt yourself? It was so interesting to hear that. And then on the technological side, of course, since I'm working in this area, I know a lot already, but there were things definitely that were new to me. I want to mention the concept of charging from the road. I don't know if you have read about that.
I did. I started to look at that chapter. So kind of what I did was I looked at like each of the beginnings of the chapters and then started reading them. So I'm not reading it in a very linear fashion, but I was fascinated by the idea.
Yeah.
It seems very pie in the sky, like kind of ridiculous. But then when you start talking about it, it's like, oh, okay.
Well, and it's not new, trams do the same. So, but it just made me rethink. So if you have a conductive rail laid on existing roads, and then you have a conductive pickup underneath the vehicle connected to that, then you're charging while you're driving. You don't have to park, you don't have to wait and plug in. You're charging while you're driving. And then I was thinking, well, I'm doing a trip from Wisconsin to Michigan so often, and it's always the same road. There is just this one straight path, right? And so if part of that was a conductive rail, I could get there without even stopping. So this is the story of a Swedish startup, and they're pioneering this together with some other companies, but it's just great. It works, and it's one option. Also, with a technological impact to make batteries smaller, of course.
Right. Yeah. Always smaller, more powerful, more energy dense. And this isn't really, as far as I know, it's not really part of your book, but the goal of that, everyone's like more power, more power density. So anyway, there's this societal drive. Everybody wants more power density, more chemical. You want more in a smaller amount of space. And it seems like we're heading towards potentially even a physical barrier, which is that there's only so much power density you can place into a tiny little compact space in a battery type of situation where you've got these very, very high charge differentials between the positive and negative, plates. So do you think that there's a physical limit? Do you think it's dangerous? Do you think we should be thinking about some other thing, or can we keep squishing it down?
I'm not even sure if we need to keep squishing it down. And I guess for most of the cases, we are there yet. But that was also a question I asked everybody. Hey, do you think our current battery technology is good enough for a global rollout? So you will find lots of different perspectives in there from all the different people with different backgrounds. Some of them say, yes, we do have a good enough battery technology. We can, for example, increase the efficiency by, for example, combining batteries with supercapacitors. This would be a way to go. Another person says, yes, I think we are there with the battery technology, but I think we need to reduce the amount of vehicles we have on the road in general. And then we're talking about multi-use vehicles and things like this. Another person says, no, I do not think the lithium-ion battery technology is ready for a global rollout. It's good for now, but we can still improve it with other technology, but it's a good start. So I could talk about this forever. I think sometimes we have to be a little bit careful to maybe first define what are we actually aiming for. Sometimes you get feeling we want more, but do we need that? Do we need a charging time of 3 minutes? Do we really need that? I mean, look at the cars of today. You have this big screen, you have the whole entertainment system, and you're watching Netflix every day, right? So why wouldn't you watch a Netflix show in the car while you're charging, or things like this? It's lots of mindsets that have to change, or just, I want people to be open, and I think they will be by reading some of these stories.
Right. Right. I agree. It is eye-opening. I think it's fascinating that what you said was basically as many people as you talked to, there were as many different attitudes about something like that. That it's like, oh, it's already pretty much as refined as it's ever going to get, all the way to like, nope, it's not even there yet. We have a long way to go before this technology is rolled out. And then, of course, as you said, supercapacitors, potentially dry batteries, potentially solid state batteries. There's lots of technologies. I don't know, what is the usual timeline? It's what, about 15 years from coming up with a really good concept for a battery to commercialize? It's a long time, right? It's not something that just happens in a year or two. So
Yes, and this
yeah.
is also what people sometimes forget if they make this direct comparison to the status of an engine. This is a technology that we have since hundreds of years, and batteries too. We will also learn about that in the book. We have people in there that worked on batteries for the last 30 years. And this one person describes the current wave of electrification and batteries that we have right now as his third wave.
Right.
And
Yes.
he's saying, okay, the first two didn't really work out. There were some governmental political issues. Society was not ready, but he's pretty confident about this one. So that's also very interesting to hear, because I started in this field a couple of years ago. I don't know what happened in the past. I can't read it, but it's just so valuable to have this expert opinion in there.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about, having a historical to look back. I think about that with like AI, which is more, my kind of specialty area, but to think about with batteries too, just by virtue of the fact of being older, I remember the big lantern batteries with the little spiral tops that 12 volt. I don't even remember what the chemistry was, but certainly lead acid batteries that are still in cars today, and that's an incredibly old technology. So it's kind of nice to see. I think Tesla just recently changed over, I think, all of their cars to lithium ion. The batteries that are driving the electronics are now lithium ion. Yeah. So, but it's 2022 now, and we're just moving away from a technology that's been around since what, maybe the 1940s or 50s. It's been a very long time. So, yeah, that's interesting. So I wanted to talk about the second life aspect of batteries. And I think one way to get into that is that we just saw, I think I sent you this yesterday or the day before, the article about the Audi e-tron batteries being repurposed for a power pack that's being used, kind of not mobile, just a sort of municipal power pack as a backup supply for power. So is that a good use to second life batteries? I'm a little curious why the e-tron batteries are being used, because the cars have only been out 2 or 3 years. So I'm kind of confused. It seems like, batteries should last at least a decade or so before their second life for that. So anyway, take it away.
Yeah, no, I think this is just a wonderful message. And one of the activities that we see from big OEMs now starting to think about what happens to their cars once they're not good enough for electric vehicles anymore. And this collaboration of RWE and Audi is what they're using the batteries to, I think, for a hydroelectric power plant. So this is a good thing to do, because it just squeezes out all the life that we have for the batteries, and we get this second life consumer market or market, so we can decrease the price of the first life vehicles. So this concept is wonderful, and it's great to see that the big OEMs do that. Audi is not the only one, by the way. There are lots of companies doing that. Nissan is doing small robots with second life batteries. VW is building portable charging stations. And ironically, the first chapter of my book is about an Indian startup called Nunam. And they also have a collaboration with the Audi Environmental Foundation. And they're also using the Audi e-tron batteries from prototype batteries for second life applications, for solar nanogrids to kind of provide electricity to the rural communities that are not part of the public grid. So this is wonderful. I like your question where you're saying, hey, these batteries are not even old. Why are we using them in a second life already? There are different types of second life, I would say. And I also see that happening with some local OEMs here in the US where I'm involved. OEMs need to produce lots of prototype vehicles, as you can imagine.
Right.
And I am assuming that in this case, and also for Nunam, for example, and also for a project that I am involved, these are prototype vehicles, that were used for testing, that were used for maybe a year of testing or on the road, and they can't really use them for new vehicles to sell to customers. So that's a perfect application.
Right. Okay.
But
Yeah, I hadn't thought about prototype batteries, but of course it takes a long time to ramp up to production. And even at production scales, it may only be a 90% yield or something. So there may be batteries that are not good enough for auto usage immediately, but they still could be perfectly fine for other uses. So in this second life thing, so if you start off with 100% charge for a pouch or a pack or whatever it is, approximately where, what percentage do you get down to before it goes into this second life type of application?
yeah, so we start at what we call 100% state of health, which is 100% electric range, so 100% FCC. And so this drops over time due to aging, due to electrochemical processes. Just like us humans, we're getting years, and your skin changes a little bit. And so actually, it's electrochemical effects happening in the battery that reduce the performance, reduce the capacity. So typically at around 70 to 80% of the original capacity, we say that the battery is dead in electric vehicle, and this high performance applications where you have this high charging and discharging rates, it just doesn't work that good anymore. And also the electric range is of course reduced. So then we say it's dead, and this happens probably, there is some data that shows that after 5 to 10 years, of course, depending on how you use it.
Right.
On the application. This is why the battery biography and tracking the data is so important. But let's
I hadn't thought about that aspect of it, but that the battery biography becomes data points for the future, because you can say, oh, this chemistry doesn't work as well in this particular situation as this chemistry might, or something. So it can help you improve over time and utilize the proper kind of battery chemistries for specific type of use cases. So that's very cool.
Yes. Or for example, also, if you think about the recalls that happened last year, GM and Hyundai recalling thousands, 10,000 of electric vehicles because of a risk of the batteries to catch fire. They really had a hard time to track or to find the reason why are these batteries failing. And so if you have the whole life of the battery kind of tracked and recorded, then, and also understanding, okay, who made this cell, where was it made? This is the whole idea about the battery passport, the battery biography, to make this visible.
Right. That makes really good sense. So you've got obviously high performance, like you said, and weight and space make a really big difference at that point too, of course, because in an automobile or potentially a plane eventually or something, every square centimeter you're taking up and every kilogram that you're using is you have to move the vehicle against that. So I assume the second life types of applications are things like permanently mounted wall racks, like Tesla's power walls, or this German, what did you say? I think it's hydroelectric, right? They're using it as a backup for that. Yeah. So, but it doesn't matter, right? You can take as much space up as you want to, and they can be very heavy. So you can actually put more packs in there, so that since it's only got like 70% of the original capacity, you can just put more stuff in. Yeah. Okay. So that's very, very cool. And so then about when does it go from being usable for that to just simply not being usable anymore? Or is there a third life before it has to be recycled?
Yeah, so there are estimations that you can use a used electric vehicles after the end of first life for another 10 and more years in an energy storage system. So This is kind of incredible.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, you're saying like these are all predictions at this point because we just don't know.
Yes.
Right. I mean, we're so new into this that we're guessing that, what if it's a 10 years? I was thinking about that because we drove about 31,000 kilometers, or about 19,000 miles last year. So over 10 years, if we stayed at that'd be about 310,000 kilometers or 200,000 miles ish. I have a feeling that the battery will not be the thing that will degrade the fastest. I think the car frame or something else will become obsolete first. So the battery itself might still have 85% capacity at a time when it would be second life, simply because we sold the car or something like that. So it could still have even more than 10 years in another application. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so so project out 20 plus years. You've got this nice new battery. It's gotten old and tired, and so after it gets used in a stationary power type situation, I really like the idea of the micro power things, right? Especially in rural places where you can have solar panels and batteries, and especially if they're used batteries, because they must be a lot cheaper, right? That's something you don't have to pay as much for these older batteries.
Yes, well, this is something that I do not have a clear opinion about it right now, and I want to try it myself actually.
Mm.
Because, I was talking to companies and you can imagine that when you want to reuse a battery pack from an electric vehicle, you have to put some effort into it to make it, to repurpose it for a second life application. You have to work on it, you have to disassemble it, maybe you have to make a new control algorithm, a BMS. So you put work into it. Then the question is if we just look at the financial aspects, is this effort too big compared to the reduced price of a new battery technology in 10 years?
Oh,
So,
interesting. Yeah.
um, if you just look at the financial aspect, probably we'll run into a problem here. But
Right.
the hope is, and also lots of people in this book really have this vision that it is more important to make the sustainable circular economy than just making profit all the time,
Right.
honestly. But so we started, I want to show this to you. We started to disassemble a Mach-E battery pack.
Wow.
So
Okay.
a pack, consists of several modules. One module
Right.
would be this size, and then it consists of several of these slices. So, and to kind of take this apart, you need to unweld the bus bars and you need to work a lot. And then depending on the design of the battery, it's easier or not.
Right. Okay.
And so I was talking to recycling companies that needed to disassemble batteries 10 years ago. And she told me, okay, we had to put them on the crane, rotate them 30 times to get to all the mount points,
Oh, geez.
change tools 20 times because all the screws were different. So what I want to say actually is that we're starting to seeing design guidelines for battery manufacturers and designers to make batteries from the beginning in a way that they're easy to disassemble and recycle.
Right. That actually, I hadn't even thought about that, but just mechanically, the design of the batteries so that they're thinking about a second life application so that you don't have to go through this ridiculous process of disassembling a battery. I mean, even more ideally, if you had things like the power packs or the cells where you could just basically plug them into a different type of electronic controller and they would just continue to work. That would be ideal because then you'd have to do very little work. You just plug it right back in. So I just have to ask you, I was going to ask you about the Jeep later on, but I don't know. I think we talked about this last time. You had just purchased was it a 1997 Jeep? Is that right?
99.
99 Jeep.
Yeah.
Super new, but you've now torn the engine out. It looks like you took the steering wheel out and everything. And so now the goal is to put an electric motor in there and a bunch of batteries, right? So are you going to use the Mach-E batteries? Maybe repurpose
Yes,
them? Oh,
yes.
cool.
Yeah, we got it to a point where I'm not so sure if we can ever get it back together again. So it just doesn't look like a car anymore. So it's really completely disassembled. I'm happy because I didn't hurt myself or anything. So, but
Right.
it's fun. It's a great experience to do that. And now we really tore it apart. And now it's about to get the batteries, e-motor, inverter, BMS, all the neat things in there.
Wow. That's
Cool
really
journey.
cool. Yeah. Yeah. I'll put a couple of pictures over this part, but I love the picture of you with like the engine. It's like, there it is. So yeah, wow. That good for you. I am not a mechanically inclined person, so I would run terrified away from anything like that.
Me neither, but I do have a husband that is a great help. He did that before. That always helps. But I have to describe one moment when I was looking at that engine because I'm not an automotive person really. I mean, I work in the
Right.
industry. I'm passionate about batteries and stuff, but I didn't see many engines before. And then I was looking at this thing, and even under the hood, if you open this, that looks so complex. That looks so like, oh my gosh, this really works. And sometimes when people are like, oh my gosh, I don't understand batteries, I'm like, but look at an engine. Do you really understand how that works? Because I'm looking at it and I'm like, this looks so complex. I just want to kind of take away the fear for people to go electric,
Right. Yeah, the chemistry and the batteries and everything is complex, but the motors are, and I know this is a huge oversimplification, but the motors for electric cars are substantially, there's a lot of engineering involved, but there's a lot fewer parts. They may be very high-tech parts, and they may have had a lot of thought that has gone into them, but they're not nearly as complicated as, and like you said, we've been making internal combustion engine motors for 120 plus years. So there's a lot of experience that's gone into refining these particular motors. And we're just, we've had electric motors, but these high performance ones, we're still pretty much at the beginning of all of that. So it'll be very cool. So what motor are you going to use? Are you?
Yes, I can't wait to get it. So we will probably use one by, but maybe we don't share that yet because I don't want to give it away yet.
Okay. I'll just beep it out. So there will be an electric motor that will be in here.
We're looking into many, many different options, and hopefully now I finally find some time to prepare some YouTube videos again, and we'll share the whole story.
Right. I think people would love to see the journey. I hope you've gotten some videos of like tearing apart the vehicle.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I for one know that I would absolutely love to watch this journey, and even even when you try to put it together and it doesn't work the first time.
It won't.
Yeah, so that will be a lot of fun from a distance. I don't know. I'd be frustrated if I was doing it myself, but okay. So yeah, so I actually, we've kind of talked about this before, but one of the questions I had was, we've talked about how long these batteries are lasting now, and how long do you think that it will be before we get this second life penetration, like a significant amount of second life batteries being utilized, and then also, to the significant amount of recycling? Or do you think because of price differences that we're going to jump straight from first life to recycling and jump straight into, re-upping the chemicals? I don't know what to call it, making them fresh again.
Yeah, there are many aspects in there. I think first we need a major penetration of electric vehicles and the first life batteries. We're not there yet. We had a huge acceleration in 2021, and we see more and more and more, but still it's a very small amount of people that drive electric, very small amount of electric vehicles out there getting old and getting to a stage where they would reach the end of life. So it will be another 5 to 10 years where we see second life batteries getting a job. Right. You mentioned an important point, and I'm not so sure how this will turn out in the future, that at some point, maybe we need to get the raw materials back earlier to make new batteries instead of using them in a second life. And for example, I do believe that Tesla will go that route. I do not see any indication for Tesla doing second life applications themselves. They have power walls and all these things, but I see them using fresh cells. And I don't think they will use their electric vehicle batteries in a second life. Because now, especially since they're going from cell to body, this huge integrated in the vehicle, that kind of, I don't think that works for this modularity that you need to reuse and repurpose. So I think they would go directly with the recycling, which is fine too, and then build new batteries from that.
Okay. Unless they just want to turn their power walls into you just take the bottom of the car out, turn it on its side, and that's the power wall. So, but yeah, so like, what is it? Redwood Recycling. That is not a spin-off, but by one of the people who worked with Tesla for a long time. So that would actually make some sense, because I was thinking about that. I was like, if we do a full first life and a full second life for all of these batteries, it's going to be a very long time before we get to recycle them and reutilize them. So So I guess maybe a bifurcation that there will be some second life use of these, and there will be cases like, I don't know. I mean, if a car gets damaged, like a car gets in an accident and gets totaled. Now, I don't know, because then of course the batteries, who knows whether they're structurally safe anymore. But I could see cars doing that where you could then take them out relatively quickly, even while they're still almost new, and then utilize them
Yes.
for second life purposes. But yeah,
We looked into that also, like for the Jeep to get some used batteries, we also looked into that and wanted to go that route. Right now, it's not so easy to buy a damaged car as a private person or even as a business like me,
right,
but it
right.
will change.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I guess there's gotta be some legal changes to that too. So, but I do, part of the aspect of this also is I keep thinking about Wright's law and how battery costs are declining so much. And it's that, oh God, it's, I don't know why I go to this metaphor, but there's a metaphor about like if people who want to go to another star system, far, far away, and they leave and they can travel at a certain speed, but they also know that in 50 years that people will be able to travel 4 times faster than they can, that they'll actually pass them on the way. And so there's a sense in which you've got these second life batteries that have kind of a fixed cost because they cost a certain amount to make, and then they've been used, and then you have to put, as you say, effort into them to make the second life utilization. But in the meantime, the cost of the original batteries is traveling downward so quickly that it may not be worthwhile. So
Yes, this will be very interesting to watch. And one of the open challenges or open questions that I also ask everybody, what is the value of a used battery?
okay.
What is it? If I buy an electric vehicle, I want to sell it. What is the value of the battery? And again, of course, it comes back to how was it used? What is the current state of health? Depends on how it was used. How was it charged, discharged, and stuff like this. So again, comes back to the battery biography. But we need to work on many aspects there, and it will be
Right.
need a collaboration of everybody.
Okay. At the very least, it's obvious that we have to recycle as much as we can, because we can't, as we get millions upon millions of these vehicles on the road, you can't just keep mining the minerals that just will either run out, or it will become so expensive to mine them that it won't be worth it. So it does make sense. I think that again, redwood materials, he said, like, the new mining is going to be taking taking your cell phone or taking your car and recycling the components of that. That will be the new form of mining. And it's not free, of course. There's energy involved, right? You have to use energy, human power, heat, other things to be able to extract those chemicals, but it has to be less than mining it. So I mean, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seems like it's got to be.
Yes, I do not, to my knowledge, there is no information out there to answer that question. How much energy would it really take right now? So I can't get a quantified answer probably right now, but I think what we kind of have to remember in this case is that we can't always do what is the most financially profitable, maybe, especially now with batteries, electric vehicles, renewable energies. We have the chance to kind of go a different route. We can first decide to do something that is socially responsible, that is sustainable for the entire planet. And then we can push ourselves to make it financially possible to scale up. And there must be a way to do that. And I think this works. If this works, we can really achieve this circular economy, and we can then really stop the mining, and recycling will be like this local mining opportunity.
Right. And speaking of, a huge advantage of recycling over mining is that, let's say the only place you can mine something is in Australia, but your factory is in Fremont, California. If you have a recycling center that's 50 kilometers away, or even closer, to the actual place that's manufacturing the batteries, then that gives you a huge advantage just in terms of shipping. You don't have this all over the globe.
Yes.
I know Elon Musk has talked about that before, where he says, like, this thing has to go around the globe like 4 times before it finally gets to you as a customer. And that's incredibly inefficient and bad for the planet, of course, too. So, yeah.
It is. And there's another crazy example of one of my interviews from the book. you know that most of the rare earth materials, now I'm talking about rare earths that are not in batteries.
Right.
But just to say that, they're in China, right? And
Right.
so China decided to stop exporting these. So how would we get these? Okay, we can go to China, produce there, and then export it. But how else would we get these materials? Well, we could get them back through recycling.
Right. Right.
That's another aspect. That was an eye-opening moment.
Yeah, it is interesting how there's a geopolitical aspect to all of this also, because, and then, there's cobalt is it, oh gosh, what country in Africa is it? Is it Congo? The Republic? Yeah, Democratic Republic of Congo. But that's an incredibly politically dicey and humanitarianly dicey place to mine. But if you want cobalt, that's where you have to go, unless, of course, you can get it out of old batteries. So that also reduces the need for that. So very interesting. So I'm getting towards wrapping up. We've been talking for quite a while here, but I wanted to ask, so, you're a battery person. It's like, oh yeah, I've got to read Veronika's book. But if you're just a normal person, is it important to read this book also? I know what my opinion is, but I had a feeling you would say yes.
My goal, and that was not so easy, but my goal with the book was really to use a language that my mom and my dad could understand. For sure, you need to be interested and a little bit technical, interested in the topic, but I wrote it in a way it should be readable and enjoyable by normal people. My editor, she is an author and she is retired. She is in her 70s probably, and she really enjoyed reading this and she got so much information from it. So yes, it's a book not only for battery experts, but really for everybody to understand it, because it was important for me, because I think there is this gap. We as a society, we are part of making this movement successful. We need to be open-minded to go electric, to be open to generate trust in this technology, be open to buy an electric vehicle, talk about range happiness instead of range anxiety, and really go that route together.
Right. Okay.
This is a quote, by the way, by Karen from Elon Road, range happiness.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
I think that's just, I find that myself personally on a daily basis, because I drive the Tesla and I rarely go on road trips, but most of the time I plug it in and every morning the car is full. I don't ever have to go to the gas station or think, oh no, I've only got like this much gas left, So I do have range happiness under normal circumstances. So I really like that rethinking about it.
Yeah.
Cool. Very, very cool. And I think, I too personally, from reading as much of it as I have at this point, think it's very important for anyone who's kind of interested in this whole thing, including just being interested in the planet, because this is a huge disruptive movement that's going on. And I think there's a lot of disinformation about how terrible batteries are for the environment and how much worse they are than internal combustion engines. And, but you have to, it's a complex issue, and you need to have this information, which this book has. And I think it is very accessible. I'm certainly no battery person, but I can understand what's going on in the book. So that's great. All right. So my final question is, if you could wave a magic wand and make something happen in the battery biography or battery world improve dramatically, what would that something be?
Yeah. So for me, the battery biography is kind of the solution. It's not necessarily the status quo. If we look back to the circle, that's not the status quo. But if we can make this economy circular like that, according to something like a battery biography, and really enable this reusability and recycling of batteries, so we can stop the mining at some point and find this kind of stable, sustainable way of transportation and energy, then I'm pretty happy. So why is this not the case right now? I think it's just as you said, there is so much uncertainty out there.
Right.
The market is moving fast. Media hypes topics like crazy. And then people are also forced to change their mindset. And I think that's a lot, and it takes time. And this is really the reason why I wrote a book. Writing a book in this day and age is also maybe a little bit old-fashioned, but I thought, we're having access to fast information all the time, but let's collect the wisdom of all the experts, put it together for everybody to read and reflect.
Right. Yeah, it's long format. Of course, you do have the ebook version, so that's still pretty modern. So
It's not too bad. I think a couple hours. So it's 160 pages. So it's really not so bad.
Right. No, and I think having the biography aspect of it too, again, the human biography it makes it very fascinating to hear why people are interested in that particular area and why it's so important to them. So it's very, very cool. Well, I don't know if you have anything to add, like any thoughts to.
I just want to thank everybody actually in this book that was just so open to share their not only professional story and career, but also their personal story. And because they didn't know what it will look like in the end. And I'm very, very thankful. And I hope lots of people will read that and share it.
I also like at the end, you have the contributors, the people you interviewed, and you have their spirit animals, which is awesome.
My little brother drew them.
Oh, no way. That's so cool. I didn't know. I thought they were I really like them. Anyway, that's very cool. So that's a little Easter egg. This is what happens when I tend to read books very weird, scattershot kind of way. And so I went to the end at some point in the middle and was like, oh, that's super cool. And then, back to the beginning. So, but you can read it like that. It's not like a linear book that you have to read in a certain order. It's very much, you can read each chapter as you wish.
Yes,
because they're all parts of a circle.
But yeah.
Right. So, all right. Thank you so much, Dr. Veronika Wright. I really appreciate your time today. And of course, definitely buy her book, but also check out her YouTube channel, which is Electrified Veronika. I will put links to all of that stuff in the description. And of course, feel free to, I'm sure, ask her questions about all of this kind of stuff if you have an interest in batteries, including potentially careers in the field, which I mean, talk about a really, really widening field. There is going to be a lot of need for battery chemists, engineers, battery management system people, all sorts of things, everything from programming down to chemicals. So yeah, that'll be great. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And everybody have a lovely day. I will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.